Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the regular Bellingham City Council meeting for November 18th. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we're gathered today on the ancestral homelands of Indigenous people who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin and Northern Cascades watershed from time immemorial, in particular the Lummi Nation, Nooksack, Semiahmoo, and Samish tribes. Other announcements and upcoming meetings. Bellingham City Council meets all requirements of the State of Washington Open Meetings Act. On December 9th, 2019 at 7 p.m. in City Council chambers, there will be a public hearing to consider a draft ordinance that prohibits the use of restrictive covenants that preclude the use of real property for grocery store operations or sales, except in limited circumstances. The public hearing originally scheduled for tonight has been rescheduled to December 16th at 7 p.m. in City Council chambers, which is a public hearing to consider proposed amendments to the Fountain District Urban Village Development Regulations found in Bellingham Municipal Code 20.37.230, Fountain District Urban Village Development. November is National Native American Heritage Month, which provides an opportunity to celebrate the rich and diverse cultures, traditions, and histories, and to acknowledge the important contributions of Indigenous people. It is also an opportune time to educate the general public about tribes, to raise awareness about the unique challenges Indigenous people have faced both historically and in the present, and the ways in which tribes have worked to conquer these challenges. My last announcement tonight. On November 6th, our local law enforcement community lost a veteran officer in the line of duty. I would like to take a moment to honor Linden Police Chief Michael Knapp. Chief Michael Knapp's life was defined by service, beginning with his service to the country as a member of the U.S. Army, then as a law enforcement officer for 2 agencies in California, and as a special agent for the FBI for 26 years. After retiring from the FBI, he served the Medina Police Department as police chief from 1998 to 2003. We were blessed enough in Whatcom County to have him serve as the police chief of the Ferndale Police Department from 2005 to 2016. And after retiring from the Ferndale Police, he served as the interim police chief for the city of Blaine. His service was tragically cut short on November 6, 2019, when he succumbed to the injuries he received after being struck by a vehicle the day prior. He was serving at that time as the interim police chief of the Linden Police Department. He is survived by his wife, daughter, son-in-law, and 2 grandchildren. His memorial service is scheduled for Wednesday, November 20th at 1 p.m. at Christ the King Church, and I'm asked that you join me in a moment of silence here. Okay. If you're able to stand, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Terry Borneman.
Here.
Pinky Vargas.
Here.
Michael Lillequist.
Here.
Dan Hamill.
Here.
April Barker. Hannah Stone.
Here.
Jean Knutson.
Here.
Okay, our first item this evening is a presentation. This is Whatcom Museum presentation of People of the Sea and Cedar. People of the Sea and Cedar features artifacts in the museum's collections such as Coast Salish artwork and carvings, woven blankets, handmade tools, cedar hats, clothing, and baskets. This exhibit provides hands-on learning experiences, a Lummi and Nooksack language interactive, and videos showcasing Lummi and Nooksack weavers and carvers. Themes of cultural knowledge, art, and symbolism, lifestyles, and community present the Northwest Coast tribes as vibrant, living cultures who honor their past while building cultural and economic futures for their people. People of the Sea and Cedar can be seen on the second floor gallery at the Lightcatcher building. And here to walk us through is Whatcom Museum Executive Director Patricia Leach.
Thank you, and I hope you can hear me, and it's nice to see all of you. I don't get to do this that often. I had hoped that Lummi Nation Tribal Councilman Freddie Lane would be joining me tonight to say a few words about the significance of Native American Heritage Month. And incidentally, he also serves on the Whatcom Museum Foundation Board of Directors, which we're very proud to have him. But sadly, he could not make it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how the gallery People of the Sea and Cedar came together. And if you haven't been there, I urge everyone to please visit it. It's a work in progress, it's changing, and it's evolving. This important, let me see if I can get the clicker going here. Is it? Do I hit enter? Got it. Thank you. Sorry about that. This important exhibit really began in 2014, 2015, and we had done an extensive survey working with an out-of-state organization to survey all of the visitors, all of the 76,000 visitors that come to the Whatcom Museum. And of these people, approximately 11,000 are coming from greater than 60 miles away. And when we asked both our local population and our visitors from further away, what is it that you're not seeing at the Whatcom Museum? Both groups responded that they really don't see and they want to know more about our local tribal history and culture. And so that's what started, that was the impetus to begin to transform the upstairs gallery at the Lightcatcher into a Native American interactive. And so we solicited the advice of Hereditary Chief Bill James, Lummi Cultural Council member Al Scott Johnny, Lummi linguist and educator Matt Warbus and his high school students, which were absolutely amazing, and we worked with them for the next 2 years to sort of transform this space. And what you see here, I'm going to show you just a very few slides. What you see here are the text panels. We're finally getting out much of the photo archives that are in storage that Jeff Jewell is in charge of. We're talking about the history of both of the tribes. We're pulling out artifacts that have been in storage for literally decades. The most popular school program that we do is People of the Sea and Cedar, formerly in the Syrie building, but nothing was available to our public. And so finally, we're getting things out of storage and making it accessible to our audiences. So you see the dugout canoe. On the right, you can see some artifacts. Some of those are reproductions, and we make those, they're not behind glass, and so they are available for examination, and you can actually touch them. These haven't, I don't think, have ever been shown. These are turn of the last century models of totems that were done by tribes a little bit north of here, but also Coast Salish, and they were designed for tourist trade, and so they were sold for tourists, and it's interesting to be able to look at these. Of course, we strive to have everything be interactive, and so you can see what people are doing here, and kids. One of the most popular things in People of the Sea and Cedar is the cedar plank house, and this completely comes apart, and then kids and families can figure out how to put it together. There's an instruction there for how to do that. One of the most important aspects of People of the Sea and Cedar is our Lummi language component, and this was worked on by Matt Warbus and his high school students. And I apologize, I don't have a better picture, but visitors can actually look at phraseology and words and press buttons and actually hear the audio of what the language sounds like. And of course, the voices are all of these high school kids. In fact, when you walk into the gallery, you're greeted by, in the Lumbee language, you're greeted by a voice from one of the high school students. And that project will continue. That will evolve. And finally, I'm concluding with just an overview of looking at the gallery. I wanted you to know that one of the things that we do with the kids that come to this, they experience the gallery, they get a tour with one of our educators, and then they go next door into the studio, and they actually experience interactives with stations. And this we just debuted literally about 3 weeks ago. Something that's very, very important to the Lumbee Nation is the whole story of fishing, of reef net fishing, and not just the historical aspect of it. It's very, very important today. And so this, if I can get this working, it's just a little video showing the station of the reef net fishing, and you'll notice how well behaved these kids are too. I don't know where the sound is. Well, as you can see, the different colored fish are going around the pond, which represent different kinds of salmon. And there, he just pulled up the reef net so you could see how it works. It's very popular. And, whoops, I think that's it. Last but not least, I wanted you to know, and I don't have a slide of it, one of the things that we think is very important is to teach people that this is a living culture. And so to that end, at the end of this summer, we began a program where we're going to be featuring contemporary art, contemporary native art. And so if you haven't been in the Lightcatcher, in the lobby, we have an amazing piece by artist Rhea Friday, who is a glass artist, and the piece is called People of Fire. It's anywhere between 3 feet and 6 feet tall. It's 10 feet long. It's absolutely amazing. And so that will be on display, I think, till the beginning of January, and then we'll change it out and be featuring more. So that concludes my presentation, and thank you for having me, and I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Council, any questions? Excellent presentation. Thank you very much. Thanks for the work that you do. Okay, we will. That's a good segue, actually. We're going to begin our 15-minute public comment period. We didn't put the rules up on the wall, I don't think, before the meeting here, but we do have rules in terms of clapping or jeering, or we want everyone to feel safe when they're up here talking and providing comment. And then at the end of council business, we'll resume public comment again after we're done with our regular city council business. So we'll go through the first 5 or 6 folks on the list there. I'm going to just do 3 at a time. And when Ms. Oakes calls your name, if you can just go ahead and line up over here just to kind of save time.
First 3 names are Rick Hanna,
Yes.
Jay Johnston, and Alan Peterson.
Hi, my name is Rick Hannum. I'm a local anti-fascist activist. I last spoke here 13 months ago about America's 3-party political system. Due to the constraints of time, I actually only spoke about one party, the party of Obama and Hillary, and to the best of my knowledge, all members of our contemptible junta. This party is known as the demagogic, psychotic National Socialist Workers' Party. It is America's fascist party. It's a party that actively works to destroy a free society. They do this by trying to limit our choices, attacking civil liberties such as free speech, due process of law, gun rights, religious rights. They also engage in a tactic a tactic that was used in 1930s Germany called the big lie. You just smear your opponent, your political opponents, and keep repeating the same lie. Now, when I last spoke, the Kavanaugh hearings had concluded in Washington, D.C. Brett Kavanaugh was voted or elevated to the Supreme Court by a vote of the U.S. Senate. But this was a difficult situation because he had been smeared, he had been the subject of a big lie by the demagogic party saying that he was a sexual predator. There wasn't a shred of evidence shown that this was true. It was just a lie to take him down. We're 13 months beyond that. The lies from the demagogic party continue. The latest big lie is that President Trump, in a phone conversation with the president of Ukraine, tried to force the president of Ukraine to dig up dirt on Joe Biden. We have the transcript of that phone call. There isn't anything like that on the phone call. It's just another lie. Now, there's another matter involved in this that is very concerning. It's the problem of due process of law. The House Intelligence Committee, which is bizarrely named, I'd say, led by this lowlife, Adam Schiff, says he has a whistleblower that knows about this phone conversation. This guy's name is Eric Ciaramella. And the Republicans on the committee would like to hear from this guy, like to have his testimony, but Adam Schiff refuses to bring him forward. This is a guy upon whom the whole investigation spins, but they won't bring him forward. The reason he won't be brought forward because he has nothing to say. If he speaks, gives his testimony, he will be questioned by the Republican representatives, at which point he will be hamburger. This guy has nothing to say. This is just a fascist episode from the demagogic National Socialist Workers Party.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Well, that's a bit intimidating, but okay. All right. Yeah, I just came here to make a few comments about the Picket Bridge sign. I just think that, I think there was a lot of what I believe is like a self-promotion, self-aggrandizement that occurred at that time. I think, it was very opportunistic. I think, for that sign to be there for 100 years, and all of a sudden in the summer, all of a sudden it's an issue for 75 people or so, I think by definition that makes it very opportunistic. Because if it had been an issue, we would have heard about it before then. We would have heard of some lead up to that until that time. So I think a lot of this stuff, in my opinion, wasted a lot of time of a lot of people that could have been used for better improvements to society, and especially in this community. There are better resources for our time than to deal with that bridge and that sign. And I think the concern alone to spend so much time and focused on removing a historical object in that sense represents sort of what I would call sort of we're all victims of affluenza, In an affluent society, we're much more concerned about things that are really, in a sense, trivial. If you were around the Great Depression, would you be focused on the sign on the bridge, And nobody was. So my point is, I think that's an issue. I think, moving on, watching the time, moving on to, for me, that's an issue of radicalism in the United States. I feel like there's a lot moving to the left and right. I'd like to see people kind of move back to the center in some way, if that's possible. So that's a focus of mine. I'm going to skip a whole bunch of stuff here. I think that when you look at, Pickett himself, what I've read about him, I don't know whether it's true or not, right? The history can always be skewed by whoever wrote it and that kind of thing. But I feel like he would not be somebody that I would like, let's put it that way. But that doesn't change the fact that, he was, educated in civil engineering. He built a bridge in the area. It doesn't affect the fact that someone dedicated that bridge to him, rightfully or wrongfully, over 100 years ago. To me, that makes it a historical monument. And I think it's a rightful question to ask, if the city or had control of, say, the Picket House, what would you do with it? I think people threw that out in some emails that I had read, and it looked like, oh, well, we don't have control of it, so it shouldn't be an issue. But the question is, you could have had control of it. How would you handle that same situation? Because, again, you'd have to deal with the same thing, but now we're dealing with a bigger deal, right? I mean, it's a bigger deal to try and deal with that house. So in my opinion, to look at this thing, the answer is not to remove and erase information, but to increase it. So to further inform and further educate is the only clear, conscionable resolution to the matter. So in my opinion, it would be more instructive to erect an informative sign by the bridge rather than to remove it and remove a historical artifact. Whether or not he built the bridge doesn't matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, what was your name for the record?
Jay Johnston.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm Alan Peterson, and it would appear that the controversy over Picket Bridge started because of a violent clash in Charlottesville, Virginia, between a group identified as white supremacists and counter-protesters. So our Bellingham mayor, Kelly Linville, decided, we got to take away those plaques. Next thing that happened is a bunch of anti-Puritan Puritans, WW students who don't really understand the local history, started to pester you guys with emails and phone calls and bugging you, telling you had to change the name of the bridge because it's racist. Well, I would argue that it is petty. It would be political correctness on steroids, and yes, it would be racist to actually change the name of the bridge because Mr. Pickett saved hundreds of Native American lives. When he came here in 1856, the Lummi tribe was reduced to about 500, and the Semiahmoo to about 100 because of the raids from the head-hunting Haidas up north. In fact, the Haida camps always had human skulls set on top of their pikes to scare people away. So Pickett and his men, they built a fort to protect these people. He also built the first house in Bellingham, and he took the Native Americans into that house to save them from the Haida raids. He was also involved in building the first bridge across Whatcom Creek, as you well know. He also he fell in love and married a Native American woman named Morning Mist, and they had a son named Jimmy who became a very famous artist, which is close to my heart. Now, I grew up next to the Lummi Nation. I mean, when I was a little kid, I could walk out my door, I could walk maybe a half block and buy firecrackers, and that was great. I also went to Marietta School when I was a kid, and most of the kids I played with, or at least 1/3 of them, were Native American because they hadn't built the tribal school yet. Now, you got to think about this. If Pickett hadn't lived, a lot of those kids wouldn't even been born. So don't tear down or change. Build up and explain. Don't be like the communists or the fascists or the Nazis that always tried to change their past. In fact, Stalin used to, when he got pissed about somebody in history, he'd make them a non-person. Soviet dissidents used to have an old saying that the future is known, it's the past that keeps changing. I've talked to my friends on the left, I've talked to my friends on the right. Nobody thinks this is a good idea, except for a very small group of individuals. Might be better to have an artist maybe paint a mural, tell the whole story. I do know a guy that used to work at the Bellingham Herald. Maybe he could do it. Or better yet, you could have a native artist maybe do some carvings to tell the whole story. So I just say, go with the majority. Don't listen to a few loud voices. Don't change the name of that bridge. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next 3 speakers, please.
MB Torres, Doug Gustafson, and Marcus D.
Good evening, I'm MB Torres. I'm here to talk about homes now in tiny home villages. And I'm going to read my notes because I get very nervous talking in front of all these people. So I'm just going to read it. Homes Now has brought us as a community a new perspective on getting people housed in traditional housing. With the housing crisis this community is experiencing, the fact that a volunteer group has been able to make this tiny home community work with astounding success is to be commended. In fact, should be looked to as a model for the city and county to be implemented as a tool to getting people off the streets. With allegations surrounding the former president of Homes Now, many nonprofit, volunteer-only run organizations would have buckled and ceased to exist. Homes Now and its many community volunteers have come back stronger. This community is willing to see this nonprofit, Homes Now, through the issues it has experienced and continue to watch and help it grow. The city has generously granted Homes Now land to temporarily use for their tiny home village, starting right here in the parking lot behind us with tents, moving to a parking lot off Alabama and Texas streets in the Sunnyland neighborhood, and currently at Fairhaven with tiny homes constructed by community volunteers and neighbors. Through these moves, lessons have been learned, tiny houses have been constructed, a community has evolved. I've been advised that the city has put in their temporary lease that a renewal is not possible at the current location in Fairhaven. I don't expect the city to go against their word to the residents of the Fairhaven community. As the tiny home village has learned valuable lessons as they grow and move, I do expect the city to do the same. Homes Now has shown they are respectful of the land, of the community, of the neighborhoods they have been in. I do expect the city, as the tiny home community is set to move yet again, for no other reason than a clause that was written into a land lease agreement to extend another lease in another location. I do expect the city to review their policies on these tiny home communities, making it possible for more to be constructed. I do expect the city to take a hard look at the homeless issue we have, the housing crisis we are in, the affordability of available housing, and the solution that Homes Now is actively offering. I, as a citizen of Bellingham, expect my city to take note of all the people that live here, even the ones that are unsheltered. And when a solution is offered up and proven to work, I expect the city to step up and see what they can do to make this tiny home concept more attainable. Homes Now needs land. Please consider leasing Homes Now some land for their future site of tiny homes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Doug. I'm Homes Now chairman. I just wanted to say thank you to the city, thank you council members, thank you to the mayor, to Chief Dahl, to Rick Sepler. It's been good to work with you guys over the years. I know that Homes Now has only been around for 2 years, and we went from nothing to Unity Village in that time. I know that we have a colorful history. I know that there are allegations related to the former president financially, but I would ask you to also look at the results that we've been able to achieve. We've been able to permanently house or get 14 people permanently housed while they were staying at Unity Village. Anyone who hasn't been to Unity Village should go check it out in Fairhaven and see the model. It costs the whole operation of 20 tiny homes, once you've built the tiny homes, is around $1,200 a month to operate the entire site. And this gets 20 people, or potentially 28 people if there's double occupancy in some of them, off the streets in a stable spot, and has over a 30% rehousing rate. Homes Now's purpose is to end homelessness one person at a time. So every single person, when they became homeless for a different reason. Some people, it's the traditional mental health, drug issues. Some people, it's that they're escaping domestic violence. Some people is that they got a medical bill they couldn't pay. Some people, they can't find work. Some people, they're on a housing list and it's been 5 years and it hasn't gone through. So we're trying to provide a very cost-effective, safe spot for them to be, so that people can move on with their lives. And I think the results speak for themselves. We are proposing the Clean Green site, but on the intersection of Woburn and Lakeway. We're open to other sites too. It's not like we've got our heart set on that site. We know it's not just the city's job, and we know the city has granted us the other sites before, and we plan to approach the county and we plan to approach the port. But just because it's not just, and the city is right that it's not just their job, but just because it's not just your guys' job, I think that it would still be beneficial to solve this problem, because what's the goal, right? Citizens of the city want to see problem solving. They want to see that something got better, that it's not worse next year and the year after that. They want to see that it's better next year and the year after that. And so Homes Now is a part of that. We're not the solution to every problem, but we are part of the solution. And hell, if you want someone else to use the same site and do the same thing to help 20 people, then by all means, go for it. That's what we just want this problem solved, and we want to be part of the solution, and we want to maintain our partnership with you guys into the future and expand with future sites. So please consider it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, esteemed council. My name is Marcus D. Stidham. I am the program director with Homes Now, as well as I sit on the Homeless Strategies Work Group that Whatcom County has. I was put there in a 6-to-1 vote by Whatcom County Council as homeless advocate for Whatcom County. In the time that I was there, I actually did not represent Homes Now, but I was into my knowledge of Homes Now, rather intimate knowledge of Homes Now, let me answer a lot of questions within that work group. And one thing that kept on coming obvious to me within the work group was that this particular model, which I did not represent at the time, was the winningest sheltering by far in Bellingham, in Whatcom County, with 1/3 of the people coming through to get it permanently rehoused, with a $2 a day per person real cost for people to come into a tiny home and lock a door, or in most cases, Just not. Put your stuff down because you're in a gated community and you trust everybody in here. Share a kitchen, share duties, reintegrate into society in a really large way. A lot of these people are getting their documents with us and getting a lot of other outreach. We just don't put them into a house and let them sit there. We try to help them figure out what their goals are and help them achieve their goals. The Clean Green site would be a great site to be able to work from. It's visible here to our community to see it. I tell you, anybody who wants to come down and visit Unity Village, it is an example of community, a fine example of community within our community. Maybe one of the finest examples of community I've seen. How many people know their neighbors anymore? Everybody knows their neighbors in there. It's great. Come down and visit. Come and see how it really works. It's representative of the old community that built Whatcom County. I know that the city has been very helpful, and I'm very, very thankful for that. We've come through a lot of changes recently, some challenges, setbacks on what Homes Now's goals and schedule might otherwise have been. I'm asking for a little more consideration from, if we can get another site up, that'd be great. It takes a lot of time it takes a couple months easily once you apply for a permit to actually get possession of the site. So the clock is actually burning on us because we got to be out of Fairhaven by April. So I'm just asking for the consideration. No, it's not up to the city to take the entire burden, and other government agencies can take it. But I'm asking for one more hand up in good faith, in good partnership, and I promise we'll really show you how this is supposed to have been run. Okay, and so the residents are just so happy in there right now. We've just really turned a corner, and we'd love an opportunity to show this community what we can do. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we'll resume public comment after the normal city business has been concluded. Mayor's report.
Brian Heinrich, Mayor's Office. I know that Mayor Kelly's home. She's not feeling well. She's watching, though, however, she did share that with me. I did want to address just quickly maybe a couple comments and echo comments that were just made around the city's role in finding another location for Homes Now. This administration certainly agrees it's not the city's role alone. The mayor has worked with our colleagues across the street and down at the port on finding another site, and I think that's where we're at right now. As stated, they have the existing location in Fairhaven through April of 2020. And part of that permit is that it precludes adding an extension. So I just wanted to get that out there and echo those comments that were made. With respect to the rest of the mayor's report, there are 3 appointments that need approval and 1 for information. And so the mayor would like to reappoint David Warren to the Civil Service Commission.
Move approval.
I'll second it. Is he okay, Terry, you think?
What?
Is that okay to put him back on there again?
I think so.
Okay.
Okay, motion's made by Councilmember Borneman and second by Councilmember Knutson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. The mayor would like to appoint Ernest Scherb to the Lake Whatcom Watershed Advisory Board.
Move approval. Second.
Motion's made by Councilmember Lillquist and seconded by Councilmember Knutson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. The mayor would like to appoint Jake Hawes to the Greenway Advisory Committee.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Borneman and seconded by Councilmember Vargas. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. And for your information, the mayor will appoint Joni Pfeiffer and Monica Abley to the Mayor's Neighborhood Advisory Commission. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so committee report outs. First, we'll hear from Planning and Community Development. That's chaired by Councilmember Barker.
Thank you. We had one item for committee today. I was joined with Councilmember Knutson. No, sorry, it was Borneman and Lillquist. Apologies. We've been going over this housing equity assessment. If you want to go back and catch up on the work that we've been doing, you can go to the City Council website. You can click on top issues, and then you can look at affordable housing and its the housing equity assessment. We've asked questions: why is housing so expensive in Bellingham? What can a city do about it? How can Bellingham provide more housing that matches our incomes? And how many people still need permanently affordable housing? Today we looked at how can we help balance the housing opportunities found in portions of our city. Our next meeting on the 9th, we will look at where should new housing be located to best reduce environmental impacts, provide access to recreational facilities, food, transit, school, and meet our health goals. And then on the very last meeting of the year, we will talk about what actions we can take to facilitate our desired outcome, as well as consider what permanently affordable goals that we as a council may want to set for this community and at what ranges of income. I think it's really important to recognize that although there are opportunities for potential annexation, and we are looking at those processes, that even when you start an annexation process, it can take up to a decade just to see a shovel in the dirt for your next home. So this community really has to look at the land that we already have and find out ways that we can build housing that's varied and matches the diversity of our community, but also matches the incomes that we have that are traditionally lower than other places. And so that means that we all have to look at different types. We're currently looking at the missing middle types, which is more single-family attached styles, under 5 units, but usually sharing a wall or maybe having a detached unit or like garden court areas. We did share, and you can again watch these presentations all in a row on our City Council website, but our housing currently, since we started our plan, comprehensive plan, and our changes to look at more integrated housing and making sure that our community is social economically integrated, because all the top data sources show that the more integrated you are social economically, the healthier your neighborhoods are. And with all of the changes that we've made in policies and all the people that have stepped up to start building homes, we are currently at a 2.16 vacancy rate. That is compared to Washington State vacancy rate that is just barely above 2%, and then Western Washington vacancy rate for the counties that is below 2%. So we're doing quite a bit, and historically what our staff also looked at is, have we ever hit a 5% vacancy rate? That's what folks suggest is a really healthy vacancy rate, and we really, as far as we can see our data, we've never even had that. So a 3 to 4% for Bellingham is what we're used to, and we're climbing right now. We're looking at about 1,000 more units coming on board, or actually permitted by the end of this year. It's one of our top permitting years. So we're moving forward. I'd really suggest watching that and staying really involved. Some of these are really heavy lifts. We talk a lot about having these integrated communities and lots of different housing, and if we don't support those policy changes, they don't happen. End of committee.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Public Works and Natural Resources, and that's chaired by Councilmember Knudsen.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had 2 items. The first item is an ordinance renewing the Trans Mountain Pipeline LLC's franchise to operate and maintain its existing pipeline in Bellingham. Trans Mountain Pipeline operates an existing 20-foot petroleum transmission pipeline that runs from Canada through Bellingham to Anacortes. The pipeline was constructed in 1950. The pipeline travels through various city rights-of-way and public property pursuant to a franchise ordinance, which has been periodically renewed and replaced. Trans Mountain existing pipeline expires in 2020 agreement. The Public Works Director reviewed the franchise renewal application against the requirements, Bellingham Municipal Code 13.15, and recommends approval as set forth in the attached franchise renewal ordinance. The ordinance follows the current MRSC Model Hazardous Liquids Pipeline Ordinance. This was approved in the reapproved in May 24th of 2010. We had a presentation on August 19th and another presentation on October 7th. This afternoon we heard from Eric Johnston, we heard from Matt Stamps, and we also heard from Phil Circa, the lawyer representing Trans Mountain Pipeline, and the committee recommends approval unanimously, and I so move.
Second. Motion's made by Councilmember Knudsen and second by Councilmember Borneman. Discussion? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so we did get a couple of emails at the last minute, and I just wanted to, several of them are in the audience that didn't get a chance to speak before us. So we had this ready to go, and in the 11th hour, I asked that we pulled it back so that we could get information from the Pipeline Safety Trust that we have here. And we had Carl Weimer write a letter, and we addressed all of the concerns that were there. There were a change or two that was made. And really the main concern that I understood from the council was this franchise agreement. We wanted to make sure that it's only for this pipe. It stays with this pipe. It's been with this pipe for quite a while. Of course, all the restrictions on making sure that it's safe, that they could repair it, but it will not extend a franchise to another pipe or to a larger pipe if they were to do that. So the things that I heard just recently, just so we can make sure that they're addressed and people feel like know that they were heard, is wanting to see if we can control how much is going through the pipe, understanding that there may be some changes and deciding to run more through the pipe than what has traditionally been. And my understanding is that's not anything a municipality can control. Is that correct?
That's my understanding as well. It is very clear in the application from the applicant that they have no intention of modifying. There are no proposed changes to the franchise service area, and is proposing no material changes to the facility currently in place. But the city does not have the ability to regulate the volume of material or the type of material that is being flowed through this pipeline.
And that was the other concern with the tar sands. And then the second newer concern was that if they are putting more volume through the pipe, can we charge more fee?
The fees that we're charging are based on the franchise, but the ability to charge on the volume is rested with the state of Washington.
Yeah. So, sorry, Michael, do you have some? Oh, it's okay. So anyhow, those are the questions that I understood. I don't know if anybody else heard any questions from folks. It's, we do most of our business during the day, and that's when we talked about this. And if you have any of those questions that you'd like to answer, you can go back to that. And with that, I just don't know any other way. I know we'd really prefer not to have fossil fuels running underneath our community, but there's very little that we can control in this. So if anybody else has any feedback,
Thank you for bringing up the points about them not being able to extend, build, or anything else. So sorry, I should have mentioned that.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, I'm going to chime in here. I'm not going to support this agreement. It's not the pipe that I'm concerned about, it's the product that's moving through it. Tar sand oil sinks in water, and there's really not a containment strategy that for our public safety that I can look at and agree with. On June 10th, 1999, this community lost 3 youth in the Olympic pipeline explosion when that pipeline deposited over 200,000 gallons of petroleum product into Whatcom Creek. I cannot sit here and vote for climate actions from this council on one hand, and then approve this franchise agreement on the other. Those things create a cognitive dissonance in my brain. In 2010, this council, well, not this council, but a city council created a resolution that basically condemned diluted bitumen is the term. It's dilbit, commonly referred to. So I'm a no on this one. Further discussion, Councilmember Barker.
Can you explain the rules around, so our hands are tied a bit on being not able to agree to a franchise agreement. If we choose to abstain or not conclude on having some kind of a franchise agreement, what happens next? Can you explain that to the community?
Well, as you know, we've had discussions in executive session, and I don't want to get into a lot of detail on that. We could go into executive session now if you so choose to talk about that further with a vote of the council. But in general, as put forth by the Pipeline Safety Trust, for example, safety is something that's regulated by the federal and state government, and that is not something that we can enforce through rules. That's by the report of the Pipeline Safety Trust. So if there's anything more specific on that, we can talk about it, but I would prefer to do that in executive session, and we could go into executive session if you would like to do that.
If I can just clarify, though, my understanding is there's some rules around how much time we can defer on a franchise that in order for us to be part of a franchise agreement and get what we want out of it, we have this opportunity, and then if we choose not to grant that, then by federal law, they can continue forward. Is that correct?
So our own code provides a timeline for approving franchises, and we're beyond that timeline now because, well, we took that time, Trans Mountain was willing to allow the council to go through its process and ask all the questions and deliberate. But I think we're beyond the code-based timeline right now.
Okay, I've got Councilmember Lillquist, then Knutson, then Vargas.
So this is sort of like a civics lesson for council members and for the members of the public, just as to what a city government is and what it is not. We're a subordinate legal entity. We are what's called a creature of the state. We can do only what they allow us to do and not much more. And similarly, the authority of state governments is constrained by that the federal government kept for itself. I bring this up because we're smack against federal law and the U.S. Constitution on this matter when it comes to regulating the purpose of that pipeline. So our legal counsel, as well as outside information provided by Pipeline Safety Trust, makes it very clear that we have very little authority in this. Safety for these operation of these pipelines is regulated heavily and in detail by the state. The content and the purpose is regulated heavily by the federal government, and that leaves us with dealing with the location. What are its impacts in putting a pipe in the ground with regard to other utilities that are put in the ground? That's basically what we're limited to. And that's frustrating, especially for someone like Mr. Hamill, who understands that we have large community and global concerns that we're dealing with, and this somehow seems to kind of make us hypocrites, or at least contradictory. I ran across this most recently with regard to the franchise agreement for small cells, where I felt the federal government was not doing its job adequately to investigate the possible health and safety concerns for that kind of radiation. As a matter of fact, federal law prevented me from even considering those concerns. And I feel like I'm in a similar situation here. And in that particular matter, I abstained because I felt that I couldn't vote yes in good conscience, and there was no legal way I could vote no. And I find myself in a similar situation tonight.
Councilmember Knutson.
I think it's amazing that we had this discussion this afternoon and none of this was brought up, but that's beyond the point. I'm going to say this. I don't take a backseat to anybody when it comes to pipeline safety. I was sitting in this body on June 10th, 1999, and I know that a lot of our community members were in this community at that time. What did we do after that horrible disaster? Along with the mayor, along with Carl Weimer, this council built the toughest pipeline safety rules that are now adopted nationwide. This pipeline has been in Bellingham since 1950. And I understand, Dan, when you talk about climate action, yes, we're going to find a whole bunch of these things come up when that task force recommendations get to us and we act on them. That's going to be, it's going to be financial, it's going to be this whole community, it's going to be something else. But I'm confident in our legal staff. This is the third time we've talked about this. Trans Mountain has sat down and gone over this after we got Carl Weimer's letter. So I'm going to be supporting it, and I hope we have enough votes to do it.
Councilmember Vargas.
Thank you, Gene. So, I'm very confident, and also the state and FERC supports us in regards to safety regulation, so that is not my concern on this. I just wanted to say that the reason we have pipelines is we are feeding our entire society. Our schools, our businesses, our homes, all of our economic development. So when you vote no against this, you are voting against an economy. You are voting against all the people that are supported by this pipeline. If I felt that there was a safety issue here, I would absolutely not support it. But I feel we have done all of our due diligence in this, and saying no against a pipeline that is feeding an entire economy and keeping hospitals and schools and transportation going feels against my role as a city council person to make sure that our society is healthy and strong. And I feel like this is something that is important for us to do to make sure our economy stays as is and those units are supported. So I'm going to support this.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Borneman.
I would love to have the power to say this ain't gonna happen. And I've looked at it every which way I could in the past when these franchise agreements have come up. I sat at the hospital in Seattle with grieving parents as they waited as their child ended up dying there from that explosion. We worked through that. If we could stop it, that would be great. We don't have that power, but we do have a responsibility to get the best kind of deals that we can get and act on. To not act is to give up our responsibility as council members to the community. And so, I'd love to toughen it, I'd love to do the others, but we've got as much as we can get from it. And I feel a responsibility to the community to vote, and I will vote yes, even though I would love to be able to stop it. But I do have a responsibility to the community to carry out my duties, so I will do that.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Abstentions? Motion carries 6-1. Okay, you have one more item?
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgot, lost my place here. Okay. The next item was community broadband update. The City of Bellingham, in partnership with the Bellingham School District, Whatcom County WTA, owns and operates a community broadband and fiber optic network serving communication needs of public agencies. Using this system, the City of Bellingham provides free public Wi-Fi at all city buildings and several city parks. The 2019-2020 budget includes $100,000 for a study to consider option to extend the use of existing community broadband system beyond public agencies. Options range from dark fiber leasing to public fiber to premises with the city as a direct service and content provider. Rough draft request for proposals for this study is attached. Comment and input. The RFP will be presented to the council prior to being advertised. We had a discussion this afternoon. Councilmember Lillquist came up with some language, and Councilmember Barker had language also. We gave direction to the Public Works Director, and this will be coming back in March of next year. Okay, and end of committee.
Great. Now we'll hear from Finance, Personnel, and Economic Development, and that's chaired by Councilmember Vargas.
Thank you, Council President. We had two items in front of us today. The first one was an ordinance amending the Bellingham Municipal Code to adopt mandatory changes to the city's business and occupation tax, often referred to as B&O tax. Earlier this year, the legislature passed House Bill 1403 that adopted a number of changes to the business and occupation tax. These changes are mandatory for all municipalities collecting B&O tax. Updates include clarification how income from services is apportioned between jurisdictions, new alternatives to the standard of apportionment of services, and changes the due date for annual flyers to coincide with federal taxes. The city is required to adopt these changes effective January 1st, 2020. The committee did recommend approval, and with that, I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Vargas and seconded by Councilmember Knutson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Our second item today was the budget recommendations for 2020s for the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. So this is a committee that we have. I sit on that committee as chair in my role as finance. And this is money that we collect from the from our hotel taxes, and we distribute that through grants to help tourism and keep the cycle of tourism and our economy healthy. And so this budget was proposed today. We look at grants every year in October. We just finished going through all the grants. We had a total of 38 applicants, and we awarded grant dollars to 31 of them. So our total budget is, and the whole meeting was in our afternoon meeting, if you're curious and want to see who all those grants were approved to. But in total amount, that we will be giving this year amounts to, in 2020 is $2,864,889. That also is support for Bellingham Whatcom County Tourism, Mount Baker Theater, and Whatcom Museum History of Art. and also our grant proposals. And so that was for information only, and that's the end of committee.
Great. Councilmember Knutson.
Just one question. Was this the first year the Bellingham Bells asked for money? Do you know?
I believe this was the first year.
Yeah, the only reason I ask is because I go to a lot of games, and they bring a lot of people from outside of our city. The parents come from all over the United States to watch their kids play, and they bring family, so I'm glad to see that in there. So I didn't know if they'd done it before.
No, I don't think so. And we also have a partnership with them. If you've seen it, they have a really great bus that goes all over the state, and it has pictures of Bellingham all over it. So we get calls all the time saying, wow, look at you, Bellingham. So we have a great partnership with the Bellingham Bells. So I'm glad to see that they were awarded a grant.
Great. Okay, we'll move on to the committee of the whole. We had 7 items this afternoon. The first one was adopting a resolution regarding a sales and use tax for affordable and supportive housing under RCW 82.14.540, and that was a substitute House Bill 1406. RCW 82.14.540 authorizes the city or county to impose a local sales and use tax for the acquisition, construction, or rehabilitation of affordable housing or facilities providing supportive housing, for the operations and maintenance costs of affordable and supportive housing, and for certain cities and counties providing rental assistance to tenants. The city and county staff worked together on a proposal under which the county will impose the maximum amount of tax instead of the city, and the jurisdictions will work collaboratively to ensure the funds are allocated as previously directed. The proposed resolution declares that the City Council will not retain the sales and use tax so that the county may. This afternoon, the committee moved to recommend approval of the resolution as amended, replacing the attached moratorium on page 1 of the resolution with the memorandum attached to the resolution 2019-25. The motion carried 7-0, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made by the chair and seconded by Councilmember Lillquist. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, just to let people know, this is kind of a clever tax in the sense that the county will be levying a tax or will be authorized to take a tax, but it's a tax that's already collected by the state. So what it means is sales tax doesn't change at all. Instead of going to the state, it simply stays with Whatcom County. So that's one of the reasons why the state government approved it, and all the cities and Whatcom County is in support of it, because it's not actually a tax increase, it's just a repurposing of monies.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Our second item this afternoon was to consider a recommendation from the Historic Preservation Commission regarding the renaming of the Pickett Bridge. As previously directed by Council on October 22nd, 2019, the Historic Preservation Commission held a public meeting regarding whether the name Pickett should be removed from the bridge that crosses Whatcom Creek on DuPont Street. The HPC has reviewed staff findings, considered public comment, and deliberated on the topic, and in the findings of fact and conclusions dated 10/31/19, presented its recommendations to City Council. Committee moved to accept the recommendations of the Historic Preservation Commission, and that motion carried 7-0, and I so move. Second. Okay, a motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Councilmember Vargas.
I just wanted to add that this was a long process, and we are not trying to erase our history. We are just recognizing who we are right now, and this went through the Historic Preservation Commission. There's over 180 pages of public comment. So we weren't willy-nilly about this. We took a very long 2 years before we took any action. So for this to come to us, just know that it went through a very long process.
Councilmember Lillquist.
Yeah, I kind of want to echo some of Pinky's statements. This is not about rewriting history or pretending something didn't happen. Captain Pickett did indeed serve here. He was part of our local history. I think we should continue to remember that. The Civil War was also part of our history, and we should continue to remember that. But the bridge is not a historical monument. The bridge is a bridge. But what did happen in 1918 is the city council, prior city council, did make an act, a memorial act for Pickett. The city council is not removing the bridge or rewriting history, but we're deciding that that city council action should probably be revoked now. Just simply remove the name. And so that's not an act in my mind of rewriting history, that's an act of removing a memorial, which in itself is kind of like a non-neutral political act that a previous council took. And so we're taking another non-neutral political act as a statement of local values. I'm going to vote in favor of this.
Councilmember Knudsen.
Yes, I am too, because I think oh my goodness, I'm always lecturing people here. I don't have my microphone on. My goodness. I think the fact that we're not going to rename it, says a lot, and I'll go ahead and support it. But I just want to put away a rumor that I've heard. Terry Bornum and I were not on the council in 1918, so let's put an end to that.
Further discussion? Further jokes? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Third item this afternoon is a resolution exempting the winter shelters from the state building code requirements in order to provide housing for indigent persons consistent with the provisions of RCW 19.27.042. Several interim shelters will be in operation this winter. The use of the subject facilities for these shelters is permitted by an emergency interim ordinance consistent with state law, building code, and requirements may be waived provided that the building provides housing to indigent persons, is pre-existing, is owned by a public or nonprofit corporation, and is found to be safe. The building official and fire marshal have determined that the buildings pose no threat to human life, health, or safety. Additionally, all criteria established in RCW 19.27.042 have been met. The adoption of the proposed resolution will allow continued operation in the interim shelters without strict compliance with the code while still being safe. The committee moved to recommend approval of the resolution. The motion carried 7-0, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made by the chair and seconded by Councilmember Vargas. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Our next item this afternoon was an overview of winter and severe weather shelter operations for those experiencing homelessness. Staff provided an overview of the various interim shelters that will be in operation this winter, and this was for information only. Our last item was a consideration of a package of amendments to the Waterfront District Sub-Area Plan and related documents. The Port of Bellingham has submitted a request for approval of a series of amendments to the 2013 documents that guide the redevelopment of the Waterfront District. On October 7th, the City Council held a public hearing on the proposed amendments. At the conclusion of the hearing, the Council assigned the matter to the Committee of the Whole for further review. Council reviewed the amendments on October 21st and asked staff to address several additional issues at the November 18th work session. Staff provided responses and were available to answer questions. The committee provided direction to the staff on multiple items, and this agenda item will return to Committee of the Whole at a later date. And the last two items were Agenda Bills 22496 and 22497, and those were postponed to a later date. Those were related to the waterfront sub-area. Okay, I'll now, I've got approval of the minutes from November 4th, 2019 regular city council meeting, and I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Lillquist and seconded by Councilmember Stone. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Old and new. Councilmember Barker.
I forgot to add in my report from the Planning and Community Development Committee. At the end, we had a small discussion around needing to tackle the master planning, which is a gap in our current code, and that will be coming forward to the 2020 Council on your agenda to make sure that we get through that next year. And then also request if we were going to be having the demonstration ordinance, which allows for folks to get an increase in density if they're going to be allowing for affordable housing, permanent affordable housing, and that will be brought to us in committee by the end of the year. So we also talked about the clean and green, and that originally whenever we did decide to stop that service, that we had asked that we consider affordable housing, and there was some discussion around allowing some temporary use for temporary housing while we're trying to explore that.
Okay, thank you. Any other items for old and new? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Executive session, we had one item this afternoon. This was a potential property acquisition. Staff provided information on a potential property acquisition. This was for information and discussion. No action was taken. Consent agenda.
Approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Knudsen and seconded by Councilmember Barker. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Do final consideration of ordinances and then go back to public comment. Okay.
Agenda Bill 22452, an ordinance of the City of Bellingham, Washington relating to the levying of taxes and establishing the amount to be raised in 2020 on the assessed valuation of the property within the city.
Move third and final.
Second.
Third and final by Councilmember Knutson and seconded by Councilmember Barker.
Gene Knutson.
Aye.
Michael Lillquist.
Aye.
Hannah Stone.
Aye.
Pinky Vargas.
Aye.
April Barker.
Aye.
Terry Borneman.
Aye.
Dan Hamel.
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0. Agenda Bill 22447. An ordinance of the City of Bellingham, Washington, amending the 2019-2020 biennial budget, providing for adoption of the mid-biennium adjustments to the biennium budget pursuant to the terms of RCW 35.345.130.
Move third and final.
Third and final by Councilmember Vargas, second by Councilmember Knutson.
Michael Lillquist.
Aye.
Hannah Stone.
Aye.
Pinky Vargas.
Aye.
April Barker.
Aye.
Terry Borneman.
Aye.
Dan Hamel.
Aye.
Gene Knutson.
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0.
I just have a question for.
Go ahead, Councilmember.
On our third agenda item under Committee of the Whole, I just want to make sure we did make a change to that ordinance, and I don't remember if we stated the change in passing it. Did we need to restate that change, that small change on the memo when Tara presented today?
So that, I believe President Hamel mentioned that change. It was to the 7th whereas clause, and he mentioned it as he was introducing it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we'll go back to public comment.
The next three speakers are David Morse, Darcy Allen, and Edradine Hovdry.
Hello, I'm David Morris. I'm one of the residents at Homes Now. I see this program as really changing people's lives. It's helping move people forward. And I'd like to just propose the consideration for having a clean green site so that we can get together and get this moving, because it takes a lot of work to get this site moved to. And that's all I got to say. I'm short and sweet. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Darcy Allen. I'm a resident of the Samish neighborhood, and I have comment about removal of the name Pickett from the bridge on DuPont Street. I'll admit early on, our initial establishment of that as a monument to Pickett had deep connections to our local business community and most likely our city and county council at the time, who we were really active with the KKK in the early part of the 20th century, and that also the greater part of the funds to create that monument came from the Daughters of the American Revolution, which have an acknowledged racist past. Bellingham has racism in its history, but I think we've done a lot in the 15 years that I've moved back and lived here full time to try to step forward and demonstrate that we are a more inclusive community, that we acknowledge our past as part of how we can move forward. I'm disappointed in how the council moved, but I accept that decision as a thoughtful one. My perspective as someone who spent a number of years volunteering at the Pickett House Museum was that we had a very high volume of people who saw the brown wayfinding sign on DuPont Street that gave some context, and they would come to us saying, we wanted to know why this name is in the neighborhood. We didn't know there was a museum here. Tell us more. And when I testified at the Historic Preservation Commission, I heard repeatedly from more people on the commission. To me, it sounded like passing the buck. Well, let's take the plaque off and give it to the group who can tell that story better. Let's hand it to the Pickett House because they do a good job of telling that story. To be honest, honest, when I arrived at the Pickett House and started being a docent, I saw a short future because of the group that runs the Pickett House in trust. It is owned by the State Historical Society, of which has no interest in maintaining it as a museum. The building is on the National Historic Register, but that is no guarantee that it will stay as a historic building or stay as a museum. The people that run this museum are very small in number, and I'll acknowledge are fairly elderly. I worry that in 5 years, that museum will no longer exist. It felt unfortunate to have the commission encourage us to take the plaque off and hand it off to an organization that could disappear in very, very short time. I would love for us to flip the narrative and expand the story to be Pickett's second wife and his Native American son, both who have fascinating stories to tell, and we can still keep that name.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Yes, my name is Edradine Havdi, and I live on Lakeway, and I have lived there for the last 55 years. My family came to Washington Territory in 1855. I'm the president of the Daughters of the Pioneers. I'm also the state administrator to the Daughters of the Pioneers Scholarship Fund, and we give 2 scholarships to university women a year. So I had and sent you electronically 5 pages of lots of facts and lots of my trying to justify why not to change the name of the bridge. Went home today, changed course, and have a very short thing to read to you. The Daughters of the Pioneers of Washington was founded in 1911 in Seattle and have chapters throughout the state. One of our goals from the beginning has been to make known historical sites and spots, documents, records, and incidents. In making known historical spots, our members often seek to have signs made to educate the public about the historical spot and thus more about the story of our state. Our chapter maintains and gives tours of the Pickett House, and we have since 1936. Yes, our group is aging. I've learned that when I reach my 80th, but I'm still here and I'm still giving tours, so I welcome you to come when you can. It's the second Sunday of each month. The house has been there for 163 years. There's lots of information that is not accurate that's been printed and reprinted, such as Morning Mist was never Mrs. Pickett's name, such as the house was built by George Pickett. It wasn't. It was built by Russell Peabody. It's on Peabody Hill. Russell Peabody owned the mill. There's lots and lots of facts. But approximately 5 years ago, I noticed the bronze plaque knee-high on the bridge. Got down on my hands and knees and read it. Oh, the DIR contacted Sharon Suftorf, the region at that time, and we decided to find out just what the name of the bridge was. It took several months, but they began to know us at City Hall, and finally they sent one of the people from the sign department out to the bridge, and he said, "What do you want?" We said, "We want to know if our husbands can build a sign and put it on city property to say that this is the Pickett Bridge, because in 1918, officially, it was named Pickett Bridge." "No problem," he said. "What do you want to say on it?" So I pointed to the bronze plaque and said, "Put that, what's on it?" Now, that bronze plaque, has been lots and lots of talk about it. It's not being racist, but if people have a chance to read it and know about it, it doesn't say anything about what was all of the hullabaloo. My recommendation is simply to leave the sign down, leave the plaque alone, and just get on with business. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next 3 speakers are Gina Estrada, Aaron Booker, and Justina Owens.
Hello, everybody. So my name's Gina Estrada, and I'm here just simply because I received a postcard in the mail about the Climate Action Task Force. I don't know a lot about it other than there is some information out there about that there's going to be a timeline on when people or residents are going to have to convert from gas to electricity. And so my question is, for those who, we're talking a lot about people who are needing housing, my concern is there might be a lot of people who are unable to, within that time frame, meet those deadlines. And if they're unable to, then they might join those who are on the streets already. And so I'm concerned because I don't know how many people are here about this particular thing, the task force, but it makes me wonder how many people in the community really are aware of it and what their thoughts are and whether or not they can budget for this and if they know when to start budgeting so that if it's mandated, if it goes through, that they'll really be able to do it. So I'm just here to inform you that I don't know if your communication is really working and getting the message out because I would think more people might be here concerned about that. We do have a lot of people who are on fixed incomes and they've lived in Bellingham for many years, and when you get to a point where you don't have an income coming in, then you're living budget to budget, and a lot of your money goes for food and for your pharmaceuticals, and they're limited on making adjustments to their home in a short time frame. And then in addition to that, it seems like there should be a grandfathering in deal, kind of like what we do with old cars. With old cars, they're still on the freeway, but they give off a lot of exhaust. So with the older homes, for those who can't, they're on a budget and they're unable to make that change. It seems like they should be grandfathered in, and with the new buildings, with all the new revisions happening, we certainly want to make Bellingham more green. We want to support that. We want to protect our land, but we don't want more people out on the streets. Or in my opinion, we don't want more people out on the streets. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Aaron Booker, and I'm here to talk about the Climate Action Task. There's TAPF. Anyway, it's lots of acronym there. My concern is facts, and so I've been doing quite a bit of research as well as reading the notes from the task force. And so the biggest concern that I have is that we're really aiming at a small portion of with what I'm reading. And so I'm just looking here at the December report from the state. About 18% of our emissions come from electricity, up from 15% in 2012, and transportation is over 40%, up slightly. And actually, residential and industrial uses are down in the 20% range, and they're flat. So let's aim at the big portion, which is transportation. So if we require electrical car chargers, I own an electric car, second one. I had solar panels on my house, and despite what is said, I bought them in 2002. They had about a 10-year life because I got a new roof, and the cost to get them put back up and taken down was prohibitive, so I have a nice inverter that's not doing anything. But let's just focus on what really moves the needle, and transportation is the biggest one. And let's make recommendations about new construction, great. But existing construction, we're going to skyrocket taxes because, yes, it's based on when you sell a house, and there's all of this fantasy, in my opinion, about how that's going to work. But immediately, house prices will all go up to adjust to the reality of all of this new expense, which means taxes go up, which means if you're homeless, you are more likely to join those ranks if you're on fixed income. So I feel pretty passionate about it because I've been down the road of participating in processes before, and it's been pretty ugly. I really think we need to be filling the Bellingham High School, Whatcom Community College, Westerns here, educate, educate, educate. Making fast action is going to really upset people, really, really upset people. Also, just want to point out PSE, where we're going to get this electricity from. Currently, 38% comes from coal, 38%. 33% from hydroelectric. Hydroelectric has there's some questions, especially around salmon. Will we continue to have as much hydroelectric? Natural gas, 21%. Not much left there for renewables. Okay, so moving everything to electricity hastily is really not a wise move in the long run. Let's let technology catch up. Technology will catch up.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Justina Owens, and I'm here for Homes Now. I'm one of the new tenants that just moved in recently, one of the 3 new tenants. And I just want to say that it's like a family there. I was welcomed with open arms, and I really think that it's a great thing that people are doing for us there and the community. I hope that you guys have a new site for us soon, and I really think that it will work. I really am very comfortable there. I feel like I have a new little family too, so thank you.
Thank you.
Next 3 speakers are Jonathan Jackson, Lynette Allen, Joseph McDonald. Last one is Jacob Peterson.
Okay. That concludes the list after that. Okay.
Hi there, my name is Jonathan Jackson, and I'm a resident off of Old Woburn, right next to Lakeway and Woburn there. And just in regards to the Clean Green site, potentially being available for Homes Now, I love the idea. As I've learned more about the organization, the passionate people that are involved with it, and just addressing, just places for people to be, to stay warm, to have a community. I think it's a wonderful thing. I have 5 kids and a wife, and we feel really comfortable and excited for the opportunity that could be a reality. So I strongly urge, movement on finding a site, any site, but definitely, as somebody who's right up the street, I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lynette Allen. Well, I want to say, basically, I agree with everything that's been said about Homes Now so far, from Doug, from Marcus, and from David Morse, and I'm for the Clean Green area happening. And I want to say that Bellingham has a chance to be pretty unique in this whole Homes Now thing that's happening, and I hope you'll take that opportunity to support it, keep it going. I really like what's happened with the homeless strategies work group. I think that's something that it's brought a lot of the folks together that help the homeless, and a lot of people have learned a lot from each other and been able to help much more because of that, and I hope that continues. Last time I was there, this last meeting, Emily from Lydia Place spoke. I learned so much from her. She really has an insight into what works, and she really, well, I was impressed with what she had to say. I love the fact that she stressed prevention. She's had a chance to learn, and she knows what she's talking about. So that's my idea too: more prevention, more one-on-one advocacy, and more communication out to the homeless people. They're not getting the message. It's not, a lot of times they just don't know what's going on. A lot of them do, but some of them don't. If they're at Homes Now, they have more of a chance of knowing it. And some places they do. But if they're just out there on the street, and a lot of times they really don't have a clue what all is available. And I would like the city and the county to step up and have more communication out there, more information out there to the people who need it. Maybe it's like at Maple Alley Inn, just a whiteboard that says what is possible. Something like that, something simple. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Joseph McDowell, and you know I have a speech impediment. My topic tonight is about the new 2020 airline ID. I believe this ID is a prelude to the mark of the beast. People who apply for this ID are making a worldly decision based on peace and security. It states in the Bible in 1 Thessalonians 5:3, "For when they say peace and security, sudden destruction will come, and they will not escape." If you have this ID already, I suggest cutting it up like a credit card that will get you into trouble. Thank you, and God bless America while it's still here.
Thank you. Neil, last speaker. Or one more? Okay, great.
Good evening. My name is Jacob Peterson. I'm a student at Western Washington University, and I'm here to help with the information gap that people are having with the Climate Action Plan Task Force. I've been consistently going to their meetings and hearing all the numbers and the research, because that's what they are, a research group to advise the City Council how to fulfill the resolution to make Bellingham carbon-free and 100% renewable by 2035, if it's even possible, which I believe it is. That doesn't matter. Anyway, so this is not fast action. The City Council is going to have to, what's going to happen is there's going to be a final report that's going to be submitted to the City Council by December by the Climate Action Task Force. They've been working on it for a year, and the City Council is going to make policies off of that, as all of you, the people of Bellingham, including myself, have a whole bunch of public comment. So we'll have our voices heard, and we've had opportunities to have our voices heard the whole time. If all these recommendations are implemented, or some of them, it's going to be a 15-year timeline. As old gas-fired appliances need replacement, you'll be required to replace them with electric-fired appliances, which can save up to $400 to $600 a year on heating and cooling bills. And there will be time for renewable technology to catch up. It's the fastest growing industry in the United States, and we live in a country where industry grows with a vengeance. The task force is focusing on transportation. There are recommendations for speeding up the timeline of the bicycle master plan, plans to help WTA have an all-electric bus fleet, and plans to implement group buy programs for electric vehicles. It's basically like Costco. A bunch of people buy electric vehicles, and everyone who bought an electric vehicle in that deal gets a cheaper price. And the price of electric vehicles is going down dramatically. And you'll also save a ton on gas. According to Charles Barnhart on the task force, who's a real math whiz, happens to be a professor at Western Washington University, he'll save 200 to 300% per year as opposed to a conventional vehicle. And my favorite plan, I would say, is to try to make the city more pedestrian and bicycle friendly, so you might not even need a car if you don't want one. Your second largest capital expense will not be forced upon you like our society forces upon us now, but you can have one if you want.
Time.
Thank you. Thank you. The last speaker, Ms. Oakes. One more?
I don't have one.
Okay, great. Is there any other business before this council this evening? Okay, seeing none, we're adjourned.